We're going to start off here with in the arrest of Colombia activist Mahmoud Khalil.
There's been a lot of frenzy in the news about the detention of Mahmoud Khalil.
Moments of chaos outside Columbia University in New York on Monday, where demonstrators demanded the release of Mahmoud Khalil. He was one of the main student organizers of last year's pro-Palestinian tent demonstrations on Columbia's campus.
That was New York State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, who is running to be mayor of New York City, protesting against the detainment of Khalil.
He's a former Columbia University student who was here on a student visa and then has married an American citizen and has recalibrated his visa to a green card.
During the encampment, he served as the lead negotiator with the Columbia administration.
They haven't actually been able to prove any of those allegations. They are simply making them now because they understand the very shaky legal footing that they are on, having disappeared a permanent legal resident of this country purely for political speech.
There are moments in history when a single case exposes the fault lines of a nation's values, testing the delicate balance between rights and responsibilities. Mahmoud Khalil, a former Columbia University student turned activist, stands at the center of such a storm. His deportation raises critical questions. Where do we draw the line between free speech and national security? Does a foreign national have an inherent right to remain in the United States while advocating against its interests? And if so, at what cost?
He's an Algerian citizen who grew up in Syria and Palestine.
I was born and raised in a Palestinian refugee camp in southern Damascus in Syria. My family's history in Palestine actually goes back to as long as my grandparent could trace it.
And he's the spokesman for something at Columbia University called Columbia University Apartheid Divest, in which it suggests that no university should allow any investments with the so-called criminal state, apartheid state, as they call it, of Israel.
I woke up today to a surprise that the university had suspended me, although I had received assurances.
Now, he was deported because his activity is in contrast to what the State Department guidelines suggest, and that is simply that they do not want to issue visas, whether green cards or student visas or other sort of visas, to people whose activity is in contrast or against the interest of the United States foreign policy.
Late Monday, the demonstrators got the news they hoped for.
We just got news that a judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration's order for deportation.
On March 10th, 2025, Judge Jesse M. Furman of the Southern District of New York issued an order preventing Khalil's removal from the United States until further notice, with a habeas corpus hearing scheduled for March 12th.
The federal judge who put Khalil's deportation on hold has scheduled a hearing for Wednesday to determine the next step. But Trump, who promised a crackdown on student protests, says Khalil's arrest will be the first of many.
As of March 17th, Khalil remains in detention, and his deportation has not proceeded, indicating that the hold is still in effect.
You know, I think it's not simply Mahmoud's freedom at stake. It's not that of his pregnant American wife, Noor, who is due to deliver their baby in 1 month, or that baby who's about to be deprived of its father. It is also what we are so proud of as Americans, the First Amendment in this country. That is what's at stake.
Khalil's defenders argue that he was simply exercising his right to free speech. After all, in the United States, the First Amendment protects even the most controversial voices. But does this protection extend to non-citizens? The US government, through the State Department, has long maintained that visas are a privilege, not a right. The power to grant or revoke them is based on national interest.
Mr. Khalil he's a guest in this country. He is not a United States citizen, and he can't come out and do what he has been doing at Columbia.
So the question is it fair for Mr. Khalil to go back to his home and lose his green card? The left and many on the libertarian right said this is a free speech issue. He can say whatever he wants. Yes, he was the spokesman for the Columbia University Apartheid Divest Group. So what? He can say that he doesn't like Israel, that October 7th was a glorious occasion. And if you look at the literature of his organization, it's very clear that A, they have called October 7th a wonderful event, and B, in the past they've called for the eradication or destruction of Western civilization. Now, he may deny that, but that's what his organization has done.
Far more alarming for demonstrators is what they see as an attack on free speech.
The president of Barnard University, the sister campus of Columbia University, about a week ago wrote an op-ed blasting Mr. Khalil's organization and said that they were responsible, had caused over $30,000 of damage, vandalism to the Columbia-Barnard campus.
The caption reads, "From our side of the barricades."
They have on two occasions forcibly entered halls on the university campus and refused to leave. They have illegally encamped on campus grounds, refused to leave, and he was the negotiator.
Let us not dialogue with our persecutors. They're called police officers, and when they tell you to sit your ass down, you do it. Or you get arrested, or possibly deported, Khalil.
This is an individual who organized group protests that not only disrupted college campus classes and harassed Jewish American students and made them feel unsafe on their own college campus, but also distributed pro-Hamas propaganda.
So the question is this. It's very simple. Does he have a right as a resident to speak and do whatever he wants? As long as it's not criminal, he does. Does the State Department have a right to consider whether to issue a visa or a renewal visa or a cancel visa, depending on whether the recipient is doing things in the interest of the United States, or I shouldn't say, is doing things contrary to the United States? And the answer is absolutely. Both sides are right. In other words, Marco Rubio and his State Department are just saying this. We issue thousands of visas to all sorts of people who say all sorts of things, and that's perfectly fine. Obnoxious, obscene, whatever they want to say under the First Amendment. However, we don't have to let people in the United States automatically. We make that decision on whether we feel they're in the interest of the United States or they pose a danger to the United States.
When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country, as on a visitor's visa, you are here as a visitor. We can deny you that visa.
So both sides are right, and all Mr. Rubio is saying is, Mr. Khalil, as the spokesman for Columbia University Apartheid Divest, has on numerous occasions supported groups that committed vandalism, that harassed Jews, and most importantly have called for the destruction of Western civilization and glorified a group that is designated by the U.S. State Department as a terrorist group. Now, he may deny that, but it's on record.
We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, "Hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I am a big supporter of Hamas. I intend to shut down your universities." If you told us all these things when you applied for a visa, we would deny your visa. I hope we would.
Do you really think that we would allow that visa to be issued? And the answer is no. So yes, he can say everything he wants, but his activity has consequences. It wasn't what he said, but it was what he did. And he now gets his wish. He can go back to the Middle East and be a strong advocate for Hamas in closer proximity to it.
Khalil's case is not just about one man. It sets a precedent. If the U.S. were to allow individuals like him to remain, what message does it send? That America is willing to host those who work against its interests? The issue is not whether Khalil had the right to speak, but whether he had the right to stay. In an era where ideological battles are fought not just on battlefields, but in the lecture halls of elite universities, the Khalil case is a warning. It forces us to ask difficult but necessary questions. Are we prepared to defend free speech at all costs, even when it undermines the very foundations of our society? Or must we acknowledge that national security sometimes requires firm boundaries? One thing is certain: speech has power, and power comes with responsibility. In Mahmoud Khalil's case, that responsibility has come with consequences.